Warshawski goes for goal! Toby Warshawski, what a player!
Sunda's first goal for Forge comes in the waning minutes of the match. What a moment for the young pro.
Week 8 of the CPL Newsroom, presented by Volkswagen. Charlie O'Connor-Clark alongside Mitchell Tierney and Alexandre Gangué-Ruzic. It was another fun week in the Canadian Premier League. Did you guys enjoy your weekend? I think so.
A lot of clean sheets.
A lot of clean sheets. Not so much for Ottawa, though. Because a team that did have a very good weekend is the Halifax Wanderers. And I think that's where we have to start because they're in first place for the first time in club history. Taking down the till then unbeaten and in first place Atletico Ottawa in, for my money, possibly the best performance I've seen the Halifax Wanderers put out, at least in the last few years. Genuinely a very, very impressive game against a team that had been playing the best football in the Canadian Premier League for most of the season. We'll talk about Ottawa in a second and what might have been wrong with them. Not just that they didn't have David Rodriguez. That can't be the only excuse. But the Halifax Wanderers, incredibly good in this game. I really liked their energy, their kind of tenacity. We've talked about them on this show a few times about, that kind of edge that they've got in their game this year. They're a little bit more comfortable when they don't have the ball. They'll go hunting for it. And Alex, I know you were talking a little bit about this off air. Their midfield was so impressive in this game. I'll bring you in on this because Lorenzo Caligari, 10 duels, wins all 10 of them. Isaiah Johnston, 13 duels, wins 11 of them. What was so impressive to you about Halifax?
Yeah, I think that was a great example of what worked because I think Ottawa, they've just kind of run through a lot of teams' midfields this year, sort of with the Aparicio, Castro pivot and everyone just kind of overloading the middle. Rodriguez tucks in a lot. Even the wingbacks would sometimes tuck in and just cause problems. And man, it felt like Halifax had all the answers for the first time. Most all season, no team had any answers. And David Rodriguez certainly helps Halifax's cause. But like you mentioned, Caligari was a force defensively. Johnson was a force. And I think those two give the Wanderers so much solidity. Like they're two capable, willing defenders. And I think it shows the fact that they're not putting in an Andre Rapper side because they don't feel they need him because Johnson and Caligari can do that dirty work. And then that was just like the bonus for them. Like they were still incredible on the ball as both of them are. They can get up the pitch, they can get on the ball. And I think that's what's nice with the Wanderers, that not only are they getting defense from their midfield, but then they're then turning that defense to offense. And I think that really paid off for them with how they were able to get some of those late chances and turn them into that 2-0 win.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's just so much depth in this team's midfield as well. I mean, we looked at this team before the season and they got a little bit of criticism for this last year of just how many midfielders are in this roster. And at times last year, certainly there were frustrating games where it felt like, they were just trying to get players on the pitch and it wasn't necessarily working. They didn't have a lot of width. They just had like 4 or 5 central midfielders on the pitch at a time sometimes. This year, that's still sometimes the case with how many midfielders are on the pitch, but there just feels like there's a lot more purpose to these players' roles. That this Johnston Caligari pivot works so well, and it allows Probo to get forward more. Sean Rea is dancing around really pretty much wherever he wants to be on the pitch, and he's spoken about how much he's enjoying that. And then in games, there's just that ability that Patrice Geyser has now to bring somebody like Rampersad off the bench. And maybe just add a little bit of a different element in midfield in the game. He did that in this one. He's got Alessandro Biello to bring off the bench for energy. Vitor Diaz has come in a few times and made that creative impact. There's just so many options that this team has, and it's a real credit to Patrice Geyser, I think, for how he's finding ways to use all of these players in effective ways. And I know he was very happy to talk about his midfield, and especially Johnson and Caligari, after this 2-0 win against Atletico Ottawa. And I think we're going to go back to the Wanderers grounds. We're going to hear from him right now.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a very long answer, Charlie, because it's, I mean, they're a great pair together. They do a lot of stuff that doesn't catch the eye. Like, I haven't had a chance to take a look at it, but the running that they do, Charlie, for me, and I kept talking about this, and I will say it, good players will win many games. Good teams will win championships. And that's what we have with two players that are pivotal to be a part of our team. The work rate they have without the ball is unbelievable. Like, I think Isaiah covered every inch of that field, and as did Lorenzo. But they also really complement each other with the ball, because Lorenzo's really influential in the build-up in our half. He has composure and top quality. And Izzy's got unlimited energy and can break in, stretches the game. And today I think we saw him play a little bit higher up between the lines, which was one of our plans that we had for the game. So they've been great together, and I think their relationship will only continue to grow more and more. And you know, Charlie, the one thing I have to note is that every time Mr. Halifax comes on, Andre Rampersart, he does amazing. Alessandro Biello does amazing. So we're really, really wealthy in that position. So the competition daily is what's driving all of them to be better and better.
Shout out Patrice for mentioning me by name and sounding like he's actually on the podcast live. I love that.
He is.
Maybe he is. You know, Patrice, if you're watching at home, you are always welcome to be our fourth member of the newsroom. But yeah, what an incredible weekend for Halifax. Great atmosphere as always in the Wanderers grounds, and a team on quite a high heading to Quebec City next weekend in first place. The Wanderers will take on York United at Stade Telus Université Laval in Quebec City in the CPL on tour next Saturday evening, I should say. That's going to be a lot of fun, and certainly if you are in the Quebec City area, you're definitely going to want to go to that one and see the top team in the Canadian Premier League at the moment. They're a lot of fun right now. Ottawa, let's get to them. They're also a lot of fun usually to watch. They certainly had been for their first 7 games of the year, averaging 3 goals a game. They scored 22 goals in their first 7 games, and now they have scored 22 goals in their first 8 games because they are not able to really get very close at all in this game. Obviously, no David Rodriguez, no party for them, but maybe Mitchell, I'll bring you in here. Concern for Atletico Ottawa, or just a massive credit to Halifax and neutralizing them?
Not really. Like, I know you said that we can't pin this completely on David Rodriguez's absence, and obviously we can't, but like this is
you're
a league
going
where,
to.
Yes. This is a league where if you're missing one big player, like we've seen what Cavalry looks like with and without Ali Musi, for example, you know, Halifax, even without Lorenzo Caligari, like there's these players that just have an outsized impact on what a team could do. And obviously David Rodriguez is one of those players. And I think without Rodriguez in the lineup, like that number 10 position, they have to figure out what to do with it, because I don't think that's a natural spot for Manny Aparicio. He's good there. He can do things there, but I think he's so much better served in a double pivot with Castro and his ability to, you know, have more freedom to go across the pitch instead of thinking more in that attacking zone, where I think they might have other players potentially better suited to that position. So I think that's maybe where the attack broke down for Atletico Ottawa. And we all know this team's attack is its identity. So once that wasn't going on Saturday, I think the rest of the performance just kind of followed. But in terms of overall concerns, I think they're going to have more than just one match where they don't score 3 goals to get me concerned about this team.
Yeah, absolutely. But definitely a frustrating one. I think, to be fair, Halifax did quite a good job taking away any of the width that Ottawa could have possibly gotten. We've talked about how good they were in midfield. Ottawa just couldn't get the ball in this game. Like, technically they had more possession than Halifax, but it was never in a very dangerous area. They had no shots on target, just 9 touches in the box, 0.28 expected goals for the whole game. Just not as dynamic, not as fluid as I think we've come to expect from Atletico Ottawa. But we'll move on from this one. I'm sure Atletico Ottawa will be back to the top of their form soon. They play Vancouver FC on Friday night, a big game for them. But moving on, the second game on Saturday was Forge against Pacific. Forge win this one 1-0 with an unlikely hero in the 89th minute. Jose Masunda coming off the bench. This youngster takes his chance, which is an impressive moment for him. Frustrating game for Pacific, but Alex, this was your game. We're going to start with Forge. Were the victors in this game?
Yes, in a sense. I think it was, overall a very even, competitive game. Honestly, like for a game that was 0-0 for 89 minutes, it was one of those good, enjoyable 0-0s. Pacific were, kind of threatening Forge's goal early. And then both teams kind of settled into a rhythm, and it was a very good defensive chess match. Like you look at the best players on the pitch, like Dan Nimick was very, very good for Forge, and I think he was my player of the match. It was a good game for like an Ali and Dom on the Pacific side. Sean Young returning made a big difference. Just Forge in their midfield, Achinota Janssen, Becker shutting it down. Like it was one of those where you looked at a lot of the, like one stat that really stood out is when there's maybe a low XG, low shot game, is that maybe the pass percentage is in the 70s for both teams. No, Pacific had like 87% passing percentage and Forge at 86. It's just, there was so much quality on the field defensively. There wasn't much to break it open. And it's funny, around the 75th minute, I kind of wrote in my analysis, like, this game felt like it was going to need a moment of magic to break it open. And sure enough, that's what Forge got. I think for Forge, it shows just the growth they continue to have and Bobby Smirdas also kind of pinpointed that after the match, saying that there's two things they've really wanted to work on this year. Of course, they want to work on their entire game, but the two things they focused on were set pieces, which is what won them the game last time they went to the island, and being better defensively. And it helps because when you have so much talent that you're missing Tristan Borges, you're missing David Schwanier, you bring Nanam Pomov, who's having a great game, but you bring him off. He had a busy week. And you bring on Jose Masunda, relative unknown, but he's been training hard. He's been working with these great attackers. He's obviously got something about him. If Bobby Smirnoda signs him, he scores. It shows the value of Forge's defensive work. It allows their talented players to win them games, and that was another one where they did so. And look, that's now quietly 7 unbeaten for Forge. They're still in the top 3. Yeah. What is a slow start for others or slow start for them is a pretty darn good start for others.
Yeah, absolutely. Now the only undefeated team left in the Canadian Premier League, and I do think, like, it does have to be said, Forge are evolving. This is a team we've mentioned it a few times, but I don't think we've fully recognized how many new players have come into this group this year and immediately just looked like Forge players. 3 of their back 4 in this game weren't there last year. Obviously Rama has been there before, but still wasn't there last year. 2 of their front 3 weren't there last year. And these players all look like they've been playing for Forge forever. They look like they understand the system. Bobby Smirniotis does an excellent job just integrating players into his system and helping them understand what is asked of them. Even somebody like Brian Wright, who probably will want to have more goals on his ledger so far this year, does have a very important one from the other night against CF Montreal, obviously. But even him, you can see the running and the stuff he does for this team that Smirniotis asks him to, and it's just very clear how well organized and well drilled this team is. Very quickly, though, we should hear from the young goal-scoring talent, Jose Masunda, who did speak a little bit after the game about just what it's like playing in a team with this much talent and this much depth.
It's hard to get in the starting 11 because these guys are like the best players in the league, and like I'm just learning from the best, so for one day I could be the best like them.
That's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. Pacific, though, let's get to them, Alex. It does have to be said that the goal Forge scored in this game, they should absolutely not have had a corner. Like that was a mistake, unfortunately. And I think, Alex, what you wanted to bring up here is just Pacific aren't making their own luck. Nothing seems to go their way, and when it rains, it pours, right?
Yeah, I think that was the tough sentiment of, look, over the course of a year, things won't go your way. As you see here, it was, looked like it was a Pacific goal kick. Sammy Keshvar does a great job of hitting the ball off Ben Payton, but, not meant to be. He gets a corner off that. I actually didn't realize that angle because I was on the other side of the field, of course, at Starlight Stadium. Subsequent corner, you clear it out. Masunda, a guy with less than 90 minutes of pro football under his belt, scores his worldie. Like, it's tough because you're sitting there and you went for 89 minutes and went and had a good performance against Forge. If anything, they had the slightly better chances than Forge did. They defended very well, kept Forge super quiet. And for you to not just lose, like as James Merriman kind of said after the game, like a draw wouldn't have been bad either. Like for a team just trying to find some momentum after that, tough, frustrating Cavalry loss, a draw would have been fine, something to build off. For you to lose right like that, when it rains though, it pours, and I think it shows for Pacific that sometimes locking in for 90 minutes and finding your feet again in that way isn't going to be enough. Sometimes you're going to need to create your own luck. You're going to need to manage those moments. You're going to need to do certain things on and off the ball that aren't fun. But right now, when maybe when you're in form, you've won 3 in a row, you get your luck, you win this game. But right now, when you're not in that moment, it's not happening. And for Pacific, they're going to have to find a way to get out of it, because the one stat that stands out is that they're yet to get any points, let alone beat any of the top 4 teams in front of them. And they're going to need to find a way to change that if they want to start climbing up the table.
Yeah, I think it's a really excellent point. This is a real gut punch, for Pacific, because, as you mentioned, played quite well in this game. If they hold on for a really gritty 0-0 draw against Forge, that's something you can build on, right? That's something you can take forward and look at and say, hey, we played pretty well against the only unbeaten team in the league, against Forge, but not quite the case. And Pacific starting to look like they need some kind of a turnaround moment. They might be able to get it next weekend at Valor, but another frustrated week, I think, for them heading out of this one. On to Sunday, though. York United finally back in the win column. They take down Vancouver FC thanks to who else but Julian Altobelli. Mitch, this was your game. This feels like a moment that York can build on, right? It can finally getting on the board, first home win, I think, of the year, really helped change the story around this York United team so far.
Yeah, I think just what the doctor ordered for York United, not just in winning a match, obviously, as you said, their first since opening day of the season, but the way they win it as well. Being able to obviously take that lead. They've done that 6 of 8 times, but then hold on to the lead in this game as well is critical. And it was the way they did it as well. They had to suffer defensively in that second half, had to really hold on. I think they were able to limit the errors that they made in this game, which is critical. That's something that they've struggled a little bit with recently is, especially on crosses and set plays, some of the errors that they've made have really cost them. They were able to stop a lot of those. And I think the back 3 deserves a lot of credit, both for the way they were able to obviously defend and do their job in that, with Elijah Adekube sitting in the middle of them, but that also allowed them to play out of the back really well and break that initial line of Vancouver press. And maybe even if it didn't connect with guys in the midfield or their strikers up top, at least they were getting the ball through that first kind of line of engagement and line of danger. And that was really important to stopping what Vancouver was trying to do in this game. And you see the board flash at the end of the game. There's 10 minutes of stoppage time in the second half. And you're like, oh, this is a moment where York are going to crumple. But they absolutely didn't. They held on. They did what they needed to from minute 1 to minute 100, I guess. And they get a big win as a result.
Yeah, finally. It feels like they've really been needing this for a while. Just so many games where they've taken a lead and played well. And then, as you mentioned, kind of crumbled and let the other team back into the game. Again, they probably want to kill off this game a lot earlier, score that second goal. But, as you mentioned, they did do a very good job also to find that goal. I want to shout out this ball from Oswaldo Leon again, though. Benedict, can you roll the highlight again? Because, Mitch, you mentioned these back 3 playing passes to break the first line of engagement. He breaks the entire Vancouver line with this ball. And it's a crazy ball. I think it's got some kind of backspin on it. Like when you see this second replay, if you're watching on YouTube with us, you can see the ball kind of sits up and almost stops in Altobelli's path. It doesn't keep doesn't keep like pushing forward with topspin towards the goal where maybe Callum Irving can get to it. It kind of stops in a really nice place for Altobelli. So great ball from Oswaldo Leon. Shout out him. Also shout out Elijah Adekube wearing the mask. That was sick. I hope that he's okay, but it always is pretty cool when you see a player wear those, even if it's usually for injury related reasons, unfortunately. But to stop me rambling, Mitch, let's talk about Vancouver. Another frustrating one for them. And actually, I think we're going to start here with their coach, Afshin Ghapi, who gave his own kind of full breakdown of this match. So let's hear from him first and then get your thoughts.
The challenges of logistically playing 3 games in 8 days. We're hoping that we can come in and with 4-day recovery to be fresh and to be organized. And we're very pleased with the performance against Calgary in the Cup on Wednesday. So I didn't try to make too many changes, just one change, hoping that the organization of the team can be intact and we can start the game in control. But as we saw in the first half, we were a complete different team than what I'd hoped. And then I made some changes at halftime, and I think in the second half, we came in with the right mentality, more energy. We played literally from the start on our front foot and created I think we created a lot of opportunities to equalize the game and win the game. And you have to take your chances. And I think we had enough chances to equalize, and I feel that it's something we've struggled with all season, to score goals. And even in the last 20 minutes, I brought 3 fresh young players, hoping that they bring a different level of energy and quality in the team, and they did well. All 3 did very well, and so I'm happy about the second half performance. Obviously, I'm not happy about the result.
Certainly not. Mitch, to his point, this is just not a team that's scoring enough goals right now. Vancouver, they weren't that bad in the second half. They did find their chances, and they were in this game, but again, just the ball not going in the net for them. They've only scored 6 goals in 7 games, Mitch, and I think you've identified that as the biggest issue with this Vancouver team right now.
Most definitely. I mean, they've scored more than 1 goal just once in their past 17 games. So this is something where, and they're 14-2-2 when they score more than 1 goal in a game. So I think that's pretty clear that you need to start scoring if you want to win. This is a team that's really looking to start finding some consistency of result and performance and starting to, hopefully string some wins together if they want to move up that table. But in order to do that, they're going to have to score goals. And like you said, Charlie, there was some opportunity to do that in this game. They had 19 touches in the box, 66 final third entries, 0 shots on target. I know Juan Bautista hit the crossbar, but you want
10 shots as well. None on target.
10 shots, none of them on target. Like that's just a lack of attacking execution. Also weren't able to get the ball to their strikers enough in this game. 12 touches for Campbell, pulled at halftime, but just 14 for Waro Diaz. Those are the guys who are going to score you those goals. So it's the final third where things are going wrong for Vancouver right now, and that's been an issue for some time, as those numbers suggest.
Yeah, very frustrating for Vancouver. They to sum up your point, Mitchell, they have to score more goals than the other team if they're going to win games and move up the table. Such as the cutting analysis that we provide on the CPL.
We are intelligent on this show.
The CPL Newsroom presented by Volkswagen.
I don't know if Volkswagen wants their sponsorship.
I don't think so. Anyway, before we get too off track, let's go to our final game of the weekend, and this was Cavalry and Valor. Cavalry score. It's a pretty similar scene to what Cavalry did against Pacific as well. They score 1 kind of early, and then they just explode in the second half. I think, Alex, we'll bring you back in first. Cavalry they just look so impressive right now, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, the month of May continues to be a month where the flowers bloom. I guess all that rain that they let pour during the month of April. What do they always say? Spring showers, leads to those flowers. They've certainly got it. And man, it was one of those where it was just kind of like a train just steamrolling through. Valor kind of started out. They, had a lot of energy. They were getting a lot of shots, and then Cavalry were just kind of surviving, waiting for the right moment. And then Levi Lang gets it off a free kick. And then after that, as soon as the game opens up a bit, turns into a transition game. You forget how good Cavalry are in these transition moments. And so, granted, some of it, like that Tobias Warshevsky goal that just flashed across screen, was quite hilarious because they kind of bundled that counterattack. And then Warshevsky was like, "Oh yeah, I'm Tobias Warshevsky. I'm just going to put my head down."
That's fine. I can actually just bang it from here anyway.
That's let's just rescue this counterattack, and that was
Yeah.
kind of all she wrote on that one. And again, another transition moment on the fourth goal, just so well executed from Camargo. Musi puts it away. But yeah, I mean the month of May, 4 CPL games. The fact that they've won it now by a combined, if I get my math right, 13-1. Like that just kind of sums it up. They're firing on all cylinders, 4 wins in a row. They're scoring for fun. Ali Musi is looking like Ali Musi again. Tobias Warszewski might be the best player in the league. Sergio Camargo steps up with a big game. Whoever youngster fills in with them, or sometimes it's Nicholas Veiling, Jay Herdman, Mihail Gersmenkov. They're looking great. Shamit Shom is just holding it down in the midfield. Shout out to the back line. I think there was about 4 or 5 episodes ago we kind of talked, and I said, like, Cavalry's back line wasn't looking good. It wasn't looking like themselves. Knowing Tommy Wheeldon Jr., they probably took that personally. So, credit to them. They went and locked down and, put a bit of a solidity together, and got Cal Montgomery. He's stepped up. They just found a bit of defensive solidity that they were lacking, and now it's led to this. For Levi Lang as well. Shout out, just because he's obviously one of the new faces, and it's led to them looking like the champions of last year again.
Yeah. Lang also, shout out, looks really, really good, and he's fitted very quickly to this Cavalry team. But those counterattacks are just so scary. You can be hanging on in a game against Cavalry. You can be close. You can even be just down a goal and fighting for it. And then all of a sudden they explode and you blink and you're down by 3 or 4 goals. It just happens so quickly. And there's just not really a lot you can do to defend. You can't really cheat and double team any of those attackers because they're all good and they'll all dice you up, which is the true terrifying aspect of the Cavalry attack. Valor, let's just talk about them briefly. I don't want to dump on them too much. This is a frustrating game and a tough way to lose. They had quite a good week, though. Certainly exhausted for the 90 minutes they had to put in against the Whitecaps. Mitch, where would you say you'd be if you were Valor right now? How concerned are you? How upset are you? Obviously, you hate losing 4-0, but we have seen signs in the past week of life at Valor.
Yeah, I think the trick coming out of this game is to not let 4-0 take you back to the ground level. Like, they need to allow the 2 results that came before this and the 2 performances that came before this to build momentum and not let this just completely sidetrack them. That's why it was a little disappointing that it's not just a loss to Cavalry away, which is pretty acceptable. That happens a lot to a lot of teams in the CPL.
Lots of teams lose at Echo Field.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's losing 4-0. I think that hurts a little bit more. And but again, you just have to consider that as 3 points lost and move on and try and build on what you've done before, because again, by and large, a positive last few days or last week for Valor, but they just can't let this one kind of just poor performance sidetrack everything again.
Yeah, absolutely. They do go back home next weekend, and we will look at the schedule in a second. But first, I want to take a look at the standings as they are after match week 8 in the Canadian Premier League. Look at those Halifax Wanderers up there in the top, as we mentioned, followed very closely by Atletico Ottawa. They're only behind on the head-to-head, obviously, with Halifax beating them. But we got Cavalry 3rd, Forge 4th, also tied on points. Pacific in 5th, York 6th, Vancouver 7th, and Valor down at the bottom in 8th. Yeah, so that is how things are at the moment. It's all very, very tight. We are maybe seeing some separation between a top 4 and a bottom 4, but certainly possible that somebody makes up that gap, and they can start trying to do that next weekend. We've got 4 really exciting games. Obviously, the appetizer on Friday night is Vancouver against an Ottawa team looking to get back on the horse. Forge Cavalry on TSN on Saturday afternoon, followed by the CPL on tour in Quebec City, York United and Halifax Wanderers. That one's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to be there. Can't wait for that. Sunday afternoon as well, we've got Valor and Pacific. That'll be your appetizer on OneSoccer for the CONCACAF Champions Cup final later that evening. Vancouver Whitecaps Cruz Azul. There's a lot of Canadian soccer on next weekend, guys. There's those 4 CPL games. There's the Whitecaps. There's a Canadian women's national team game on Saturday, Desiree Scott's retirement game in Winnipeg. The men's national team is in action next week as well in a Canadian Shield. There is a lot to come.
Women's U20s.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It doesn't stop. There's a lot to watch. Make sure you're subscribed to OneSoccer. Check out there's a coupon code as well. If you go to onesoccer.ca, you can check that one out for, I think, a discount on your first month of subscription. But anyway, that's the newsroom for this week. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you again next Monday.
Warszawski goes for goal! Toby Warszawski, what a player!
Masuda's first goal for Forge comes in the waning minutes of the match. What a moment for the young pro.